Hi, we are back again, and hopefully this is time we have audio after a disruptive Windows update decided to scramble the wires, cross the wires with audio devices, which seems to happen with pretty much every Windows update these days. And so I'm very sorry about that. It's one reason to, maybe invest in an Atom Mini Pro one day if I ever have the revenue, and that way I would my audio would be going through a single device. If anyone knows how to keep Windows from doing that every single time you update, and I had to do a restart in the middle of this to get better frame rate with my webcam, but this video is not about that. Instead, we are looking at episode 2 of RPG Map Critique. I am working to create a science, an approach to talking about why maps, tactical maps, situational maps in our RPG games are good or bad, why they are a dud, why they are successful. What is it about them that can work or not work? What makes them artistically interesting? What makes them less useful? What makes them hard to read or easy to read? What are features that are fun, and so on? And without further ado, I'm hoping that I have the trust of someone out there in the internet to please return. Oh, and we have one viewer perhaps, and his name is Vid, and welcome. I do these streams when I'm kind of testing out a new formula, when I'm testing out a new approach to making a video. And right now, as I'm relaunching the channel and kind of reorienting towards a better attitude, a less cranky way of looking at things, I used to be a bit more argumentative here on the channel. And I used to be maybe a little bit of one of those, not quite a shock jock exactly, but, I was trying to get the views through, the emotional appeal. And instead, I want to be more helpful and positive, and especially what I want to do is actually reach out into the universe and show you some of the more amazing things that I've been able to find, and that's frankly the reason that I'm excited to be talking to you today, is that I do feel like what we have here is something that is going to hopefully uplift things which don't get seen very often, and maybe change a few minds about what tactical maps, situational maps, that's what I want to call them, not battle maps, what they can be good for, and why we might use them. Because there are a lot of RPGs that work good, better, best with a theater of the mind approach where you don't have precise positioning of the characters. And without further ado, I think we got to keep moving on and jumping into some fun examples. This episode is about curation and criteria, as in, what are the criteria that make a map good or bad? Why do you want to use a map? What do you want to? What are you looking for? Because if you're like me, you might look for, oh my goodness, I think we might have had the webcam drop out, or rather the grown-up camera. Let's see. Oh yeah, there it is. Oh, all right. Let's see if we can't get that to turn back on. I think that might have been a Let's see if I hear her talking. Oh, goodness gracious. That's good to see. She did come back on. She got a little tired, I guess, because we dragged our feet for so long. So the first reason, which I think most cartographers appeal to, the reason that most of them are trying to get you to subscribe to their Patreon, upvote their Reddit posts when you're on our battle maps, our D&D maps, all those sorts of places out there in the internet, is that a picture's worth 1,000 words. It's one of the ways to evoke a presence, evoke an ambiance, and to show the world that the characters are in. And that's really a way to generate excitement when people show up to the table, when they're sort of looking at their phones and they're getting ready to play and so on. And those times when your wife is sending you some text messages and you gotta unlock your phone like me right now and see what is the deal. Things like that. Well, Those are times when this kind of cartography can be very useful. And it can also hold people's attention week to week. If you're planning something like a heist, if you're planning something like surveillance, if the characters have encamped for the evening, or if they get a tip from an NPC in one location about stuff that's going on in another location, the characters can pull up a map, or they can perhaps they can get a description, or maybe they're going to use something like scry at higher levels in a Dungeons and Dragons style game. They can use, lower level of things like clairvoyance. And that's one of the things that this is especially useful for, is if you're familiar with old-fashioned dungeon keys and the like. One of the things is that this is a way to not be flipping through the book constantly, as the little magic eye surveillance device penetrates the enemy fortress and surveils. Because the if you've watched Book of Boba Fett, and I don't know if you have or haven't, but one of the very most useful Dungeons and Dragons spells that we used to use a great deal was this little probe droid, essentially, that you would summon, and it would fly around, and it would be invisible, and some antagonists would be able to kind of be able to see through the invisibility, and they could hack it. So there was this kind of infiltration, and you would gather information. I don't know if it had the ability to hear, and so unless your character had really good lip reading ability, or the bad guys were using sign language, you wouldn't necessarily get that level of intelligence, but you could get the basic layout of the dungeon. And so most dungeons that your party approached after about level 7 or so in D&D, at least back in the day, it was very often that this was a very initial stage, and it was sort of time consuming, and it also sort of spotlight stealing. The magic user character got to interact a lot and ask a lot of questions, and frankly, this is a way to get the rest of the party involved, and also to summarize that, to have it take place in sort of a montage by just saying, here's the map. There you go. Now you've seen it all. Not necessarily where all the bad guys are at any given moment, not necessarily what the sound environment, sonic environment, the smells, the tastes, and things like that. It's not going to reveal those things. And so that's one of the reasons that it's useful, is both because a picture's worth 1,000 words, which saves session time. Picture's worth 1,000 words, which can pull people in and keep them excited. It can talk about something that is not here, right here and now, as in distant locations to the party members, things that you don't want to read a bunch of gray box text about. But there are deeper reasons why I like to invoke situational maps, and why I like to put them out there where the players can see. This is a map by a hi, how's it going? I'm under here. By a creator called Dice Grimorium, is one of my favorites as far as his color palette and the ambiance of his work. As far as the I don't know, I don't want to say realism, but the level of granular detail is maybe, I don't know, it's okay. But I'm really attached to how he has very descriptive biomes. So this is a loose oak woodland. What kind of forest is it? Is a question which I like to ask as a player, but not a lot of dungeon masters, especially folks that don't have the same outdoor habits and the same kind of outdoor hobbies as I do. It's a hard question to answer off the tip of your tongue, and sometimes it might not be something that you've thought about. And especially if it's not a Sylvan-oriented adventure, if the party is traveling through the woodland and say they hear some distant noises of a damsel, yelling for help, or the young prince who has been kidnapped, or perhaps the king's hunting party is going to run afoul of a wild boar and he's going to be impaled. Where have we heard about that before? Oh, Thrones, that's what it was. So suffice it to say, this is an oak woodland, and that means that we might have things like pigs that are grazing on the acorns. And we also see that there's really not a lot of undergrowth. There's this kind of close cropped situation where there's not really a lot of bushes or fern and so on that your character could hide in. So you might want to be traveling through this kind of woodland in particular, because it's less likely you're going to get ambushed. Uh, which is, of course, when your characters are traveling and they're going down the road, there's this sort of habit or paranoia where it's like once the game master pulls out a map, oh well, now I know what's going on here. Or when he starts drawing on the battle mat, if you used to use markers and draw on things back in the days when physical games were perhaps more common than online games, well, this can inform a lot of those things. And the other side of it is that it gives you the idea of uh, that maybe this isn't going to be an encounter. That's why I like to call these situational maps. Tactical maps, maybe, not always battle maps, because one of the reasons I have a just thousands of maps stored away in my Pinterest, so I can pull one out, and sometimes there's the almosts, sometimes there's the NPC style encounters, or when a player wants to cast speak with animals and they're looking for a little friendly squirrel or maybe one of those boars, and they're going to try and talk to them. Well, those sorts of situations can have an ambiance, can have a situation to them. And this can allow the party members who aren't the druid, for example, to feel like they're doing something, to feel like they're there, that they're present, and that they're witnessing. And, they can interact on some level. They're not cut off from being in that world with the character with the relevant ability. And so that's one of the reasons that I love using maps that might never see a combat. And so that's a reason that I'm really boosting these cartographers, is because they're making so much work. They're creating so much stuff that we can pull a map out, we can have the party walk through it and wonder and be a little bit scared and wonder if there's going to be a battle, and we can even desensitize that paranoia about, oh my goodness, there's a map, that must mean there's going to be a fight. We can even tamp that down because there's just so much great stuff out there. So again, this map is by Dice Grimorium, and you can check out a lot of what he's puts out there on the map subreddits, and just really great color palette. And I give this one like a 8 out of 10. It's pretty good. The third reason that I really am passionate about situational maps and RPGs, and why the show is beginning and we're going to talk about them, is because they enable approaches. They say yes to different ways of going about things. So I just talked about the scrying sensor. That and Fennec Shand uses that to take a look at Jabba's palace before her and Boba go in there to get Boba's ship back. If you've watched the show, I don't think that that's a spoiler, because the show's got a lot of non-linear storytelling, and I mean, of course, it's the Book of Boba Fett. He's gonna get his Slave One ship back. But suffice it to say, this is a level of spoilers which I will often say, and you do on my channel. If you don't like that, let me know. Let me talk to me in the chat about what level of show content you're comfortable with, because I really like to do references to television and film to talk about kind of ambiance, character situations, MacGuffins, how things happen. That's just an aside, but the primary here is that I want to talk about what sort of environments we can present. Whole cloth. This isn't, to me, a dungeon map. This is an entire facility. This is something like a training camp, or perhaps it's the Kyber crystal extraction facility that is it's taken over an old Jedi temple, and the Empire has just kind of encamped here just to get the Kyber out and to evaluate it. And so, there's a detachment of stormtroopers, and there's, maybe there's an inquisitorial detachment too. And so the party knows about this. The party has heard about it. And perhaps your characters are trying to figure out why the Empire wants so much Kyber. If you're into Star Wars role-playing, which is, right now, it's the passion, it's my heart of hearts. Oh my goodness. And I think that it might just be, it's time for an appointment. I actually have a Zoom appointment, so I'm going to have to go. But these are 2 reasons why tactical maps are great, and we will continue this tomorrow. So if you like RPG map critique, if you like what we're doing here and how we're approaching this, I'm excited to talk to you more about it.